The first thing Serafina Aldrin remembered was the sound of her own breath trembling in the back seat of a car that wasn't hers. The driver, who was supposed to take her to a harmless brunch blind date, had abruptly swerved down an unfamiliar countryside road. Her phone had no signal. Her heart pounded against her ribs, and every instinct screamed that something was horribly, terribly wrong. She didn't know the man's intentions, but the moment he locked the doors, she understood one thing: she had trusted the wrong person. Minutes later, the car crashed into a ditch during his frantic attempt to escape a police checkpoint, and Serafina stumbled out into the daylight, bruised, terrified, and alone on the side of a dusty rural road. She didn't know where she was or how far from safety, but when she collapsed to her knees in panic and exhaustion, a voice, steady, warm, unmistakably kind, broke through the chaos and held her world together. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that show the good left in people, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Spark. It helps more heartwarming stories reach others who need hope. The man kneeling in front of her was Ashton Miles, a small-town mechanic and single dad who had been fixing a tractor on a nearby farm when he saw the wreck. Sunlight reflected off the streak of grease across his cheek, and his shirt smelled faintly of engine oil. But his presence felt grounding and real. He asked if she could breathe. He asked if she was hurt. He didn't ask who she was or why she was here, only whether she felt safe enough to stand. Serafina clung to his arm like a lifeline, and for the first time since the nightmare began, she felt the ground steady beneath her. Ashton took her to his home, a small but bright place with a white porch and sunflowers growing along the fence, because the nearest clinic was miles away, and she seemed too shaken to travel. His daughter, Hazel, a shy 8-year-old with paint flecks still on her hands, peeked from behind the door. The little girl didn't ask questions either. She simply offered Serafina a glass of cold water with both hands and said, "You're safe here." And something in those words cracked open the carefully constructed world Serafina had lived in her whole life, a world built on walls, wealth, and people who pretended niceness instead of meaning it. Serafina Aldrin was the daughter of one of the wealthiest businessmen in the city. She had grown up in glittering penthouses, chauffeured cars, and curated social circles where smiles were exchanged like currency. But in this sunlit kitchen where mismatched mugs sat beside school drawings and a half-finished science project, she felt something unfamiliar and irresistible, a home that breathed warmth even in its imperfections. She watched Ashton gently ruffle his daughter's hair, listened to him softly encourage Hazel to finish her schoolwork, and found her heartbeat slowing for the first time since the accident. The fear still clung to her, but it no longer suffocated her. When the sheriff arrived, Ashton explained everything, never once making her feel judged or weak. The sheriff assured Serafina that the man who picked her up was already wanted for multiple incidents of posing as a driver through fake apps, and the crash had helped lead to his capture. Serafina's father's security team was alerted, but she asked them to give her time before returning home. She didn't want the cold marble floors or the hollow echo of luxury to swallow her so soon after she had rediscovered what safety could feel like. Ashton offered to drive her later, once she felt ready. Meanwhile, he insisted she rest on the porch where the afternoon breeze brushed away the tightness in her chest. Serafina watched him repair a lawnmower while Hazel played with chalk on the driveway. She couldn't remember the last time she felt so unseen yet so noticed, so unimportant yet so valued. No one hovered over her because of her last name. No one cared that she wore designer shoes or that her dress was from a limited collection. She wasn't an heiress here. She was just a woman trying to breathe again. As hours passed, Serafina found herself talking, at first quietly, then slowly stumbling into pieces of her life she had never shared with strangers. Her loneliness despite her wealth, her exhaustion from being her father's public image, her constant fear of being used by the people who called themselves friends. Ashton listened without interrupting, only nodding gently, occasionally offering her a glass of lemonade or a reassuring word. There was something powerful in the way he never tried to solve her problems or pretend to understand them. He simply made space for her pain to exist without becoming heavier. When evening rolled in and her family insisted she return, she hesitated. Her father arrived in person, furious and panicked, wrapping her in a tight embrace. But when he saw Ashton standing behind her, a man in worn boots holding Hazel's hand, he stiffened. He didn't say thank you, he didn't say anything. He simply ushered Serafina toward the car. But she looked back at Ashton, feeling something she couldn't name blooming quietly inside her chest, and she whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Ashton smiled, soft and humble, saying only anyone would have done the same. But she knew that wasn't true. Days passed, but her mind returned again and again to that small house with sunflowers and chalk drawings. She replayed Hazel's shy smile. She remembered how Ashton spoke to her with the gentleness of someone who understood loss but chose goodness anyway. The city around her felt colder than ever. Her father arranged private counselors, personal guards, and endless meetings to help her recover, but none of it reached her heart. Healing wasn't found in towering glass walls. It was found in the steadiness of a man who lived simply yet wholeheartedly. Serafina returned to see them again under the excuse of thanking Ashton properly. She brought a gourmet cake from an expensive bakery, but Hazel barely touched it. Instead, the girl proudly offered her own handmade cookies, misshapen, slightly burnt, but filled with more sincerity than anything money could buy. Ashton teased Hazel for using too much sugar, and Serafina laughed in a way she hadn't realized she'd forgotten how to. She spent the afternoon helping Hazel decorate the cookies with sprinkles, feeling a tenderness grow inside her with every shared moment. One visit turned into several. Serafina found herself driving to the small town during daytime hours just to sit on the porch and watch Hazel paint or tell Ashton about her chaotic corporate world. She learned he had lost his wife years ago and had raised Hazel alone with nothing but stubborn determination and unwavering love. He repaired cars, lawnmowers, tractors, anything that kept their little life running. Money was always tight, but smiles were plentiful. He worked hard not for ambition or image, but because each day he wanted Hazel to grow up knowing she was safe, supported, and cherished. The contrast between their worlds was sharp enough to hurt. Serafina had everything except peace. Ashton had little except the kind of love she'd been hungry for her entire life. But the more time she spent with them, the more complicated things became. Her father disapproved of her wandering off to see strangers. Her friends whispered behind her back, mocking the idea of her spending time with a mechanic and his daughter. Rumors spread quickly in her social circles, twisting her kindness into rebellion and her affection into scandal. Serafina stood at the center of a storm she had never intended to create. One afternoon, overwhelmed by pressure, she broke down on Ashton's porch. She felt like she was losing control of her life again,